Hi and welcome back to part 2, where I show you how you can make this shirt by yourself. If you haven't seen part 1, definitely go and check it out. I have linked it in the video description because we will continue right in the process. So this is where we left off. We have the 2 front pieces, and what we are going to do now is that we do the collar and the bar. And for the collar, we have the one with the interfacing and the one without. And we place it right side on right side. So the beautiful side, which should later be on the outside, should be facing each other. And then for the shorter side, we will pin it together and sew it. This is how it should look like now. We open it up and then we iron the seam allowance to the side where no interfacing is. So like this. And then we top stitch it. So this is how it looks from the left side. And then we top stitch it really close to the seam that we've just sewn, so that the seam allowance is pinned to the side where no interfacing is applied. Perfect. This is how the collar should look like now. Now we can fold it where we had the first seam. So fold it in half. And then on one side, which will later be on the outside, you have the clean collar. And on the other side, you have, you see the seam. Okay, now we need to pin and sew the short sides together of the collar. So we open it up again and we flip it over, so right sides touching each other. And then we pin and sew the short sides of the collar together. Perfect. And now we have this, and to be able to better turn it, we cut the excess fabric on the corners, but make sure that you do not cut in the seam that you've just sewn. But yeah, we try to trim it, so then when we turn it, we have a nicer corner. And then we turn the collar, and you can really turn it in the corners with your finger, or even use a scissor or something like this, but then really make sure that you do not make a hole in the fabric. So with a scissor or something like this, you have to be really careful. Then we iron everything so that the collar is really flat. And then the next step, we take the bar. We have 2 parts of it again, one with interfacing and one without. And for the one with interfacing, we fold 1 centimeter to the inside, like I did here, and then we iron it. And here we also search where the center of our bar is. And here we mark the center of the bar with a pin. And we flip it open again, and then we place the collar on top of the bar. And here also we mark the middle of the collar of the longer side, open side, let's say. And we place this collar with the not interfaced side down on top. So here this side should be on top of the right side of the bar where we have the interfacing. So place it on top, and the center points should match up so that the collar is really in the center of the bar. And then we pin everything together and we attach the collar to the bar. Perfect. This is how it should look like now. And yeah, this is the other side, and this is the side with the collar on top. And now we place the right side of the other part for the bar on top of it so that the bars match up. And again, we pin everything in place and we sew it in place. When we sew, then I did try to match exactly, here all this way up. And I tried to match exactly the seam or go a little bit to the left so that the seam is not visible then later on the outside. You will see in a second what I mean. So here we start also with the folded and ironed 1 centimeter, which we will need later. And then when we see here the first seam, then I try to be like a millimeter or 2 on the left side so that when later we turn it, that you do not see the first seam visible. Perfect. This is how it should look like now. And here also we, for the corners, or it's not a real corner, but the round corner, we cut the excess fabric, and we can also make little notches more or less with our scissor, but really careful, do not cut inside of the seam that we've just sewn, but it will make turning this part easier, and then also the curve will lay really nice and flat. And then we turn everything around so that we then, of course, iron it again, but then we have a pretty much finished collar, which we just need to attach to our shirt. So let's continue with the yoke. And the yoke we also have 2 times, and we place one with the neck facing down and the other with the neck facing up, but both with the right sides facing to us. So the cord or whatever fabric should be on the outside is now laying to the top. And then we have the back part here. You see the armholes basically, and the side seams on left and right side. And this part will now be attached to the yoke. And we pin it together. And before we pin it, we flip the other yoke down, and we need to pin all 3 layers together. So for the 2 yokes, the pretty side, the right side, is facing inside, and here our back part, the pretty side, is facing upwards. And make sure that you have all 3 layers, included. And when it looks like this, then you can start sewing. Perfect. This is how it should look now. And I also have a little pleat in the middle. I changed this in the pattern because I didn't like it really much. So for you do not have this little pleat. And then you have to iron it so that everything is flat. And then we also want to top stitch it. And we want to top stitch it like really close to the seam that we've just sewn, but on the side of the yoke. Perfect. This is how it should look now. And as a next step, we will attach the front parts. And here you see also the right side is facing the right side. So we want to attach it to the shoulder seams, but only to the first layer of the yoke. So here we only take the first one, not the second one. The second one has to chill for a moment. And we pin the shoulder seams together, and then we sew the shoulder seams. But really, yeah, just one yoke. Perfect. So now we have the front already attached to the back, but now we need to handle this second yoke. So what we are gonna do now is first we're gonna fold the bottom together. We roll it up so that it's like a really small fabric. So just roll it up everything. And then you already see the yoke from below. And for the front piece, we also roll it up more or less, and I show you on the second front part a little bit better. You can just lay it on the outside, and then you don't have like all this bulky fabric inside. But in either way, just move it out of the way, and then the yoke from the bottom should be matched up with so the shoulder seams of the yoke from the bottom should match up with the shoulder seams of the one where we already attached the front piece. So it kind of looks or sounds complicated maybe, but when you have the fabric in front of you, I think it's actually quite clear what you should do. And just really make sure that there's no fabric pinned inside, so that all the the front pieces and the back piece is out of your way when you pin. And yeah, for the second one here, I show you a little bit better. You can just move it to the side and just roll up the first bit, and then you don't have so much fabric and it's easier to pin all along. Okay, now you should have a burrito like this, more or less. And now we can turn everything. So pull gently on your front piece, and then you can like just pull it through the neck hole, where your head should be later. And then, just pull the fabric through and then turn it. And then you have all knittery. So maybe iron it again. But we have two beautiful sides. From the outside, it's clean, and from the inside, it's also clean. You have no more open edges, no more raw edges, and you didn't need an overlock or a serger. So it looks perfect. And I ironed everything. And then as a next step, we will top stitch the yoke on the shoulder parts so that everything is in place and nothing can move. So top stitch it close to the seam that we've just sewn, but on the part of the yoke. it looks like this. And what we can do is that we, everything clean and neat. I also just did a normal stitch on the center and the sides of the yoke so that nothing moves around, because that's still 2 layers. Next is we're going to do a French seam, and if you haven't done it yet, then I would suggest try it on a different piece. I show you here. And the first thing is that we sew our pieces together, but on this time left side on left side. So the beautiful side, which should be laid on the outside, faces you. And then we sew a straight line, seam allowance 1 centimeter as always. And then first we iron it. We iron it just the way it is so that everything is flat. And then we cut the seam allowance normally in half. So if you have 1 centimeter, then you would cut 0.5 centimeters away, or at least 0.7. So you need to cut something off because you do not want to see it on the outside later. And as the next step, we iron the seam allowances on his own side, its own side. So you have to open it and then sew it flat, the seam allowance. And I also, I don't have like a fancy iron, so I have to manually wet the fabric and then I can iron it, and then it's a little bit, it stays better in place. Next step is we fold the fabric on this line that we've just sewn or ironed as well, and then we iron it flat together. And now we will sew on this edge with 1 centimeter seam allowance again, and the seam allowance on the inside will hide because we did trim it. So now again 1 centimeter. Now it already looks pretty clean. So from the right side now we have no visible edges. We iron it, of course, again. Ironing is pretty important for French seams. And then once you have ironed it pretty well, you can turn the fabric, and then you see that you have this, kind of seam allowance as well. I don't know how you want to call it, but it doesn't lay flat. So we want to attach it to the fabric so that it doesn't move around and wiggle around. And then, we just top stitch it and attach it to our piece, basically. And when we have done this, then we have from both sides a really beautiful seam from the inside and from the outside. Of course, you would have used a matching yarn, but this was just for purposes. And this is what we are going to do now for our sleeve. So here we have the back and this is the front. And here you have the slit that we've already prepared in the last video. And now we want to insert this sleeve into the armhole. And therefore, we lay our main front and back piece, which we've already attached together. We lay it out and then we pin the sleeve in the armhole. And here, I know it's kind of weird, but we pin left side to left side. So what you normally do not do or wouldn't do, because we do the French seam now. And I know it's a little bit difficult because there are two curves, but if you do just step by step, you will definitely manage it. And then first step, we sew this line. Okay, this is how it should look like by now. And again, the first step is that we iron the seam flat. And again, this is a curve, so it's not as easy as for a straight or rectangular piece. but you have to move the sleeve again for every part that you want to iron, and also my pattern, this was the first one, my first draft basically, so the armhole didn't fit perfectly, so this is why I have these pleats more or less, but your pattern, of course, I did all the adjustments, so it should work perfectly. And now we also trim the seam allowance. I know here I didn't really do like exactly half of it, but it just has to be shorter. You just have to cut something away so that the seam allowance is hidden inside the second seam that we will sew. So yeah, it's kind of okay as long as you do cut a few millimeters. And once we have done it for the whole sleeve, then we again open it up and try to iron the seam allowance each on its own side. Perfect. And when we have finished this, then we can fold it over again so that the right sides are facing each other and we are looking to the wrong side, to the left side. And then again iron it so that it stays in place like this. And once we have ironed all this armhole line, then we sew with 1 centimeter seam allowance to the edge. Okay, now it looks like this. We have already a clean finish on the outside, and so on the outside. So I have like these kind of pleats, but for you it'll be a little bit more beautiful. And here on the inside you have also no open seams, and we just need to attach the this thingy to our fabric. And here I did iron it to the sleeve, so it faces the sleeve and then it's also attached to the sleeve. Okay, now we have finished the first armhole more or less, and it looks beautiful from the outside and from the inside, and we didn't need a serger. So the next step which you need to do is to close the side seam and the arm itself. So we lay it, just lay your shirt out, and then we need to place the side seams together, so the front piece basically and the front part and the back part together, because we want to close the side seam and the arm. And here again we want to use French seam, so we place left side on left side and pin it all the way up. Make sure also that the armpit, basically, that the seams at the armpit match up, and then we sew left side on left side together this line. basically repeat all the steps that we've done for the French seam already first and the second time. So we iron everything flat, and then we trim the seam allowance to half, or at least trim something away, cut something away. And of course, first iron everything so that everything is flat. Then open the seam allowance and iron each seam allowance to its own side. Once we have done this, then we turn our whole shirt inside out so that now the left side is facing us. And then we also iron again on this seam that we've sewn, so everything lies flat and even. And then we sew with 1 centimeter distance to the edge. Perfect, and we have now a clean finished on the inside here and also on the outside. It looks really neat. And now the last step again is to iron it to one side. Here you can basically pick whatever side you want and iron it and then attach it with a seam. Here I started like on the bottom of the shirt, and it's when you start on the bottom of the shirt, and then when you reach the armpit, basically there are a lot of fabric layers already, so you can help your needle or your machine when you place a little fabric below your foot so that it's more or less even, so it's easier for the machine. And then when you are inside of the arm, then it gets a little bit tricky because the arm is already closed, so just sew as far as you can, and then if you have too much fabric around, then start from the other side, so from the end of the sleeve where you will put your cuffs later on. And always make sure that you do not sew on top of another layer of your shirt, so move everything out of the way, double check, and then it should work that you can just do the seam for the whole shirt. And if not, if you can't because you are afraid that you will sew on top of something, then it's also not so, it's still okay. Then you don't have it attached at a minor part of your elbow, more or less. But it's okay. And this we have to do a second time for the other arm. So repeat all the steps, do the French seam. I know it's a lot of work, but you can do it. And then you're mostly there. As next step, when we have attached the second sleeve as well, we will add the collar, and therefore we will also mark the center of the collar and mark the center of the neckline basically, and pin it together. And we will pin the side where we don't have the 1 centimeter folded and ironed over. So here it is the side with no interfacing, and we place it on the shirt and then we sew it together. when you have done this, then we can flip our collar over. So this is how it should look from the inside. Pretty neat and clean. And then on the outside, we can move all the seam allowance and every open corners inside of our collar. So here we have the 1 centimeter which we folded over, and we can now pin this one down, and then we can attach it with 1 or 2 millimeters next to the end of the bar basically, and attach it to our shirt. And then our collar is already done. Perfect. We have attached our collar. It looks beautiful from the inside and also from the outside. And the next step is that we attach the cuffs to our sleeves, which we do in a kind of similar manner. So we have our sleeve here and also this little opening. And on the inside, so on the left side, we attach the cuff with the not lining, but with the interfacing, so that the folded edge is not pinned and not sewed on. So we pin everything and then we sew it on. Yeah. Perfect. And once we have finished this, we can do it like we did it for the collar. We can just flip it to the right side and then hide all the seam allowance and all the raw edges inside our cuff. And then we just pin it to the right side. And then we need to top stitch it really close to the edge. Perfect. Now our shirt is basically ready. We have our beautiful sleeves and the collar and everything. We, of course, first need to do it for the second sleeve as well. But then we just need to, then the sleeves are beautiful and we can continue with our hem. So we need a nice hem for our shirt. You can basically do different things. You can just iron it once and then flip it over directly and just sew this line. Or what you can also do, so I ironed it just once. Now I'm going to sew it and then I'm iron it, or I flip it and iron it a second time. So here I just have 1 centimeter, which I folded over to the inside. I am sewing this and then I'll flip it once again to the inside. So basically you can choose whatever hem you prefer here for the bottom of the shirt. So I, like I said, did the first stitch, and then now I've already flipped it to the inside and ironed it. Always iron before you sew. This is really important so that the fabric lays flat and no wrinkles or anything is inside. And then I did, the second stitch. Okay, now the shirt is nearly ready. We just need to attach the buttons, and I chose dark ones, but you can choose whatever you want. And before we sew a button to the shirt, I would recommend you doing a test button and buttonhole. So my button is 1.2 centimeters, so 12 millimeters wide, and the buttonhole should always be 2 to 3 millimeters wider than the actual button, so that it can fit. So first I drew a line and a starting point. Then I measure these 15 millimeters, and I make the end point. So this will be my buttonhole. And for the stitch width, I go with 1. And for the stitch length, I go something between 0 and 1. So you can also use 0.3, 0.4. And then we start on the left side of our buttonhole, and we do like these really, really small zigzag stitches until the end line. And when we arrived the end of our buttonhole, then we switch the width to between 3 and 4, and for the length we go back to 0, so no movement. And then we move the buttonhole exactly in the middle, and then we have a few stitches to the left and right. And then we go again low to 1 and stitch length between 0 and 1. And you can either turn the fabric or just do the reverse, so back stitch, and then do the right side of the buttonhole. And then again, the buttonhole should be in the middle of your foot, and increase the width to 3.5 maybe, and the length to 0. The buttonhole should be in the middle, and then again to the top ending of the buttonhole with a few stitches left, right. Then you can remove your buttonhole, and you can open it with a seam ripper or a scissor, but really be careful that you do not, rip the hole completely. And then you have to test if your button fits through it without like force, and then it's correct. And for the button itself, you mark the point where you want to attach your button. And then for the button, you have to have your button foot. So Google your instruction of your machine, and then you have to, I would recommend you to use the hand wheel and to adjust the width of the stitch so that it really matches these 2 points. And here also for the stitch length, 0. And then add a few stitches and lift your foot, turn your fabric, and do the same for the other 2 button holes basically. But and once you have the correct distance, then you can use the foot, but at the beginning really use your hand wheel, and then you have a perfectly sewn button. You have to just cut the seam. And here, so 1 button for the bar, 6 buttons with a distance of 10 centimeters for the front, and 2 buttons for the armholes. And here I already marked the positions for the buttons. So when your shirt lies in front of you, then I would attach the button to the left, which I already did here. And then for the sleeves, I already showed you. So we have like 1 button in this opening, and I had 6 centimeters from the cuff to the inside where I marked the button. And then, attach the button here. And then once it is attached, then for the cuff as well, 3 centimeters from the ending of the cuff, and I think 2 centimeters, 1.5. 1.5 centimeters. You can basically place the button wherever you want. I did 1.5 centimeters away from the ending of the cuff. And this is how it looks like. And then we have to do the button holes. And therefore I always place the button next to the place where I want to have the buttonhole, so that it's really exactly in the middle. There are different ways, but for me, I think this was the one which has the best form for me. So here I mark the middle of the button, and then the buttonhole, the half of the buttonhole on top and down. And then basically when you have finished all your buttonholes, then your shirt is ready and you can be really, really proud of yourself. I know that this was quite a few were quite a few steps, and it's a big project, but you did amazing. If you followed until here, you can be really, really proud. If you liked the video, then please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to follow the channel so you don't miss any new videos, then I am happy. See you next time.